Welcome to Community Conversations. I'm Frederick County Executive Jan Gardner. And joining me today is Greg Edens. He's the Veterans Outreach Program Specialist with the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. And he's here to talk about Veterans Community Access Centers. Welcome, Greg.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm really happy to have you here today because I think that you are going to be providing great service to our veterans here in Frederick County. And I really wanted to have this opportunity to share what you're doing with our viewers and more people in Frederick County. So can you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and about your new mission with the Veterans Community Access Centers?
A little bit about myself. My background history is that I was a Marine as well. I guess you could still say still a Marine. Once a Marine, always a Marine. I was in for 4 years, 2006 to 2010, and I did do one tour to Fallujah, Iraq. I kind of took this job because I was passionate about veterans issues and saw this as a program that I've seen personally that saves lives and relationships, and it makes it a lot easier on the veterans and their family members to transition back home. With that said, the Vet Center program is the main lead on this. The Vet Center program was established back in 1979 by Congress. Vietnam veterans were struggling readjusting back to civilian life when they came home. They didn't necessarily trust government programs or weren't treated really the best they should have been when they got home. So Congress recognized this and they came up with the Vet Center program. And due to our really successful rate within the treatment that we do dealing with PTSD, anxiety, military sexual trauma, bereavement counseling, and even marital counseling. The Vet Center program was then further pushed to be covered across all war generations for all veterans and all of their family members. The Community Access Center is basically a tentacle of the Vet Center program, and those access centers allow us to push out qualified clinicians that practice in social work that have extensive experience dealing with veterans issues into the communities that are more rural or underserved, to where the veteran would have been forced to drive an hour for the same type of treatment. Now we can be within that same community, closer to them and more accessible to them.
So we just recently announced that there will be a Veterans Community Access Center at the Department of Aging on Tawney Avenue. And there's also a Veterans Center at Frederick Community College on the campus. And so they're part of this Community Access Center network. So, what veterans are eligible for services? What can they expect when they come into one of these centers? And I think it's important for people to know they're here, that they don't have to go to Martinsburg for services. But what can they expect?
Well, they can expect somebody that's qualified and completely confident in what information is talked about. We're one of the only programs that we don't, although we are part of the VA, we don't share our medical records or anything like that with the VA hospitals. We drive that to create the trust for the veteran. Now, they could use that if they wanted to for claims purposes, but they have to physically request that to be released. It's really an in-house type of program. And veterans can expect to talk to somebody to where they can skip that immediate language barrier that sometimes happens when you transition back to civilian life or are dealing with somebody that doesn't understand military issues. We are frequently told that we speak military, we speak veteran, and that helps us get to the treatment and help the veteran transition back to being a civilian successfully. Those community access centers that we're talking about, it is Frederick County that we're in, but we see veterans at both the Department of Aging and Frederick Community College, just depending on which the veteran wants to do or their family members want to do, whoever they feel more comfortable with. It's the same person, but as far as groups go, when we talk about age, we see a lot of the OIF, OEF veterans want to be in group sessions or even individual sessions with their group, their generation. A lot of that is done at Frederick Community College, but still available at the Department of Aging. And we also see World War II, Korean, and Vietnam veterans that, kind of want to stick with their generation. It allows them, we think, to have a better success rate as far as treatment goes, and they can, what better person to really understand what they've been through than their own peers.
That's right. Than another veteran who's been through it.
Yes.
So part of it is to help people integrate back into work, school, society, their family life from their military service. And it can be, veterans are eligible from any service experience that they've had, but also their families. And I think that's an important difference, that you provide services beyond just the individual veteran.
Right. So as far as eligibility goes, a lot of the programs you see within the government, they're based off of your income, or how much money you make, or what type of insurance you have, but that's not the case with this program. The only thing you need is your DD-214, which is your discharge paperwork. That you would need on your DD-214 some type of a sea service deployment ribbon or a campaign ribbon. It doesn't necessarily have to be combat action specifically. It's just anything in support of any type of combat operation. And with military sexual trauma, we don't need any proof of that whatsoever, that it doesn't have to have had occurred during a combat theater operation. We'll see anybody related to that whatsoever. We don't question that. And based off of that, that's the only eligibility part that we have. There's no enrollment process. There's no fees associated. It's 100% free. And once the veteran does become eligible, so does their entire family, whether it be wife, brother, sister, or even girlfriend. A lot of the veterans we see maybe not be to the point that they're married yet, but they have a significant other. And with our program, we recognize that and want them to be involved too, because we want them to have a successful life. And
Right.
a lot of the times, these people are still associated with the veteran, but maybe don't have the legal title for that. But we want to include them as well, just so they understand what's going on with the veteran. And we understand a lot of times marital issues do come up because it's tough to transition from the military back to civilian life. So we want to make sure that we're there for the family as well. So that's why they're eligible just the same as the veteran.
So can you kind of run through the services that are available?
Okay, so what we do, we focus on PTSD, anxiety, military sexual trauma, bereavement counseling. Anybody that's lost a loved one on active duty, that's the bereavement counseling part, they're eligible for that. Anything related to mental health whatsoever. And then we do a lot of referrals for substance abuse. We have counselors in-house that are specialists within that field.
So it's counseling for all of those things?
Yes, anything related to mental health, that's what we do. It's just we try, I think right now we're at a 60% staffing rating for veterans that are qualified to be able to do this. So we want to make sure that we incorporate the veteran community into this that are qualified, and then those that aren't are people that are very passionate about what they do and have years of extensive service in the veteran community and working with these issues.
So is there any difference between the centers, whether they're at the community college or at the Department of Aging or someplace else out in the community?
No, the community access centers are the same across the board as far as what we do. Now, if we're talking private health care compared to this for the same type of treatment, again, this is a 100% free program. And a lot of times our counselors, they don't necessarily look at a veteran as a number and say, we can only spend 40 minutes with you today because we have other people. It's a case-by-case basis, and many times there's veterans that come in that might need an hour and a half of service, and you are not going to find that in the civilian sector healthcare. It's just not possible.
Right.
And this is 100% free, and we offer after-hours appointments as well.
So it's real outreach to people who are returning veterans to help them integrate into society and adjust to all the things they may find challenging to get back into civilian life. So do they need an appointment, or can they walk in? We can put some information up on the screen so that people can know how to contact you, but can you answer a little bit about how people can engage?
So what we've done is we've kept the same phone number at, like I was saying, the tentacles of the Vet Center program are these community access centers. So the Vet Center program that is running within Frederick County and the Community Access Center is based out of Martinsburg, West Virginia. That phone number is 304-263-6776, and we're located at 300 Foxcroft Avenue in Martinsburg, Suite 100A. Now, as far as access goes to these community access centers, you should call for an appointment, but we, welcome veterans to come in anytime they want.
Okay. All right.
Another thing that I wanted to talk about with veterans issues is when they say that readjustment issues coming back, people oftentimes associate, well, that must mean immediately when they get home, but that's just not the case. The reality of the situation is that many years oftentimes pass from a veteran coming home, or sometimes even decades, or a divorce or something, and then it's like, okay, this is a reality.
So something triggers that.
Yes, and then a lot of times the veterans or the veteran community comes and sees us based on events that have just been or issues that they've had since returning. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a windowed time as soon as you exit.
So there's no limitation. I do know from having interaction with veterans over the decades that there are people who have experienced and seen some terrible things in combat, and they didn't want to talk to anybody about it. And maybe years later, literally decades later, they feel a need to have that conversation with somebody. And so I think it's a good point to make that it's just not returning veterans who are from the recent experiences in Afghanistan or Iraq. It can be from people who are stationed around the world in support of those missions and the war on terror, or it can be people from 50 years ago who had an experience that they still need to work through.
Right, and that's exactly correct. And one of the other parts of this program that's really unique is that we are now seeing active duty service members. So a lot of times we're seeing and hearing about these problems that how does a service member go about saying, I have this going on without getting blackballed for promotion or something like that, to where they would feel uncomfortable about raising their hand and saying like, hey, I have this going on. But we now have the ability to see them as well and keep everything in-house. We don't report back to chain of commands or anything like that. We're literally just trying to help those veterans that are having these issues, whether they be veteran guard, active duty, reserve, whatever their status may be. If they're having these issues, we're out there.
Well, I really thank you for being here today to share these Veterans Community Access Centers. They are something new to me. They're here in our community. I really want to thank you for what you do to support our veterans. And I really hope that our viewers who know veterans in their community and their families will recognize that there are services available to people for free right here in the community, provided by veterans themselves at our Veterans Community Access Centers. So thank you for joining us, and please take advantage of these services in our community.